What's up, y'all? Let's make a Tuscany chicken dinner. Like and subscribe to the video and let's get into it. So I start with cleaning and cutting up my green beans. I cut the ends of my green beans off, really so that the flavor can go all throughout the green beans. Once they're all done getting cleaned and cut, I put them into a separate bowl and I start prepping my chicken. So you have to clean your chicken. I like to clean mine in my sink, but right now we're just going to do a lot more prep work. So I start by cutting up my onion and my cherry tomatoes. I cut up half an onion into squares, and I cut my cherry tomatoes into halves. I like using cherry tomatoes instead of regular tomatoes. I feel like cherry tomatoes or grape tomatoes have, just kind of like a more sour taste to them. So I really like to put that into my Tuscany sauce. So the onions and the tomatoes, they're going to be used for our Tuscany sauce. The green beans are aside. I use about half a package because I was making a lot tonight. So half a onion and half of my cherry tomatoes. Now that our chicken's all cleaned and whatnot, we can get started with our seasonings. Here are all the seasonings that I use for my food. On top of salt, I like to add a little bit of salt to my food because I don't like to use seasoning salt on everything. I don't think seasoning salt should go on everything, so I use regular salt. But yeah, I just like to season my chicken. I season it just one layer at a time, one seasoning at a time. Someone in one of my reels asked me, why do I put all that seasoning on my food? Listen, you don't have to have your food seasoned. I like my food seasoned, okay? And I like it seasoned pretty darn well, where I can taste all the different flavors throughout it. And with the chicken that I was cooking, I wanted to go with like a Cajun flavored chicken. So I decided to use the seasonings that I use. You can use whatever seasonings that you like. But how I was cooking my chicken, this was the way I wanted to season my chicken. So this is really just me seasoning my chicken, nothing too big or too fancy or anything like that, because after I'm done seasoning, that's when I'm going to mix all the chicken together. So now that the chicken's all seasoned, we're going to mix everything together so that all the seasonings can mix properly and get all over the chicken. You want to get it all over the front, all over the back side of the chicken, kind of give it a good rub down between each chicken piece. So each chicken has like a good coat of seasoning on it. I even get within under the skin, so under the skin can get some seasoning too, just because that's where a lot of the flavor is going to go when you do cook it and cook it down. So just make sure your chicken is seasoned properly. And after that, after it's done with all the seasoning and whatnot, after you're done mixing it all together, it's time to put it in the pan. So I put it on the stove. You can put it in the oven if you want, but I put some vegetable oil on the stove. You really don't need as much as I put in there. I put a little bit too much, but it's okay because it still came out great anyway. And while the oil is heating up, I started on my green beans. I used soy sauce, garlic, brown sugar, and some butter. So I put like 2 tablespoons of butter into a pan and kind of let my butter kind of melt down a little bit. And as that's melting down, I go back to my chicken. I'm washing my hands hands in between each of these takes, so don't worry about am I cross-contaminating food. I'm not. I'm washing my hands because I'm very big on salmonella. So make sure you put your chicken skin side down in that hot oil. Always skin side down, because your skin is going to cook a lot faster than the rest of your chicken. You want your chicken to be fully done, but you want to make sure you're not burning your skin. So put it skin side down, put it in the oil, let it cook for a little bit, and let that just simmer. So we're going to go back to our green beans. So as your butter is melting, put some garlic in your pan. I like to use a lot of garlic when I cook. I love garlic. I don't know about anybody else, but I like to use a lot of garlic in my food. So put your garlic into a pot, and then that's when you can put in your green beans right after. But let your garlic cook for probably like at least 1 to 2 minutes, just so that the flavor of that garlic can wake it up. Once it's done cooking a little bit, then you can add your green beans, and you're just giving your green beans like a good little saute in the butter and the garlic. You're not really letting it cook all the way through, because we're going to add some water later, but you're going to let your green beans cook for a little bit and get like a good little saute. And once it's done with like a saute after like maybe 5 minutes or so, that's when you're going to add your water. So while my green beans are cooking, I'm flipping over my chicken, kind of letting it cook on each side. I kind of give it the same amount of time on each side, so I know that it's cooking all the way through that chicken. Cooking chicken is very important, because if you don't cook your chicken all the way, it will be not done, and you will make people sick if you don't cook your chicken all the way through. So make sure you're cooking your chicken all the way through, and you want to make sure it has a good color on it, but you also want to make sure you're not burning your chicken. So make sure you're cooking it evenly on both sides when you're cooking it on a skillet and not in the oven. So you see, I added some water. I actually added a little bit more water than that, but we want to give our green beans a nice little steam and a nice little boil while it's in the water. You want to make sure your green beans are fork tender. That means when you stick your fork through it, it'll be pretty much done. If you can't stick your fork through it without any trouble, then it's not done, and you need to let it cook for a little longer, but let it cook in that butter and that garlic. You see how our chicken is turning out? Looks pretty good. I gave it another flip over, and we're going to be flipping it over soon. But you want to make sure your chicken is cooking right. So I'm going to let these cook for a little bit, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to start on the next portion of our video. Now look at that chicken. Look at the color on that chicken. That's how you can kind of tell your chicken is almost done cooking, because the color on the chicken is starting to get a little bit darker. And our green beans, you see how they went from like a bright green to a foresty green? That means our green beans are just about done steaming, and we can pretty much strain our water after this. But right now we're going to focus on our chicken. So now that your chicken is done, you can take it out and put it to the side so it can let it rest. Remember, when your food rests, it's pretty much cooking still all the way through. So the chicken is done, but it's also, as it's sitting there resting, it's getting all the way done through the bone as well too. The chicken looks so good. It was so fire, y'all. In between time, I do clean out my sink. I do scrub it down with some soap and water, and a little bit of bleach sometimes, just to make sure I can get all that salmonella out my sink, so I'm not contaminating the rest of my dishes when I put them in there. I do clean my sink, y'all. But look at those green beans. They're just about done. I think they're actually done in this part of the video, and I strained some of that water out. You want to strain some of that water out because you don't want your green beans to be watery when you put your next set of ingredients in there. So now that that's done, we can start on our next part. This is how I like to make my green beans. I add some soy sauce. The recipe for it would be a 1/4 cup of soy sauce. I eyeball it, so I don't really need to measure it, but a 1/4 cup of soy sauce, a 1/4 cup of brown sugar, some salt, pepper, and maybe a little bit of garlic powder. It's your preference or not. And then you just kind of let it sit in there and cook. Remember, your green beans are already done at this point. You're just adding in these ingredients to give it like some extra flavor and some extra goodness. If you don't want to do this, you don't have to, but I like to make this because it's a really good side for what I was cooking that night. And I just like to make my green beans this way. And the brown sugar is your preference or not. If you want it a little bit sweeter than just the 4th cup, then just add a little bit more and taste it. You always make sure you taste your food, but taste it, see if you like it or not. If you don't, don't add that much brown sugar, but if you do, just add a little bit more. I do not recommend adding cane sugar because then you'll make it a little bit too sweet, and you can actually taste the sugar instead of it kind of being like a good sweetener, like a natural sweet instead of just like a sweet. There's a difference between the sugars. That's why you're not just supposed to use regular sugar. So you can, once that's done, you can put your sugar, your green beans on low and just let it sit there. Now I'm making my Tuscany sauce. I use Parmesan cheese and Kobe cheese. You can use whatever cheese you like. But we're doing the same process as our green beans. We're going to melt some butter. I use like a 1/3 teaspoon of butter. We add our garlic. After we add our garlic, let it cook for a little bit, and then we also add our onions. Once we add our onions, we let that cook for a little bit, and then we also add our cherry tomatoes, and we just give it a good stir. Let the onions, the garlic, and the tomatoes cook for a little bit because they need to cook down and get a little bit less ripe and get to like a cooked texture. So cook your tomatoes, cook your onions, cook your garlic, and give it a good little mix. They really don't need to cook for that long. I'm gonna say from like 3 to 5 minutes. Let them cook and let them sit in that pan and absorb that butter flavor. And once that's done, then you're gonna add in your spinach. But you see our green beans, this is an update on our green beans. Just let them sit on low and let them absorb all that flavor that you just put in there. So we're going to add our spinach, and our spinach, you're just going to cook your spinach until they get wilted. You don't want to burn your spinach. You don't want your spinach to look overcooked. So you just cook them until they're wilted. How you know they're wilted? They'll kind of cook down like this and look a little bit more darker. Like I said, when it comes to like green vegetables, they'll go from like a bright green to a dark green. That's kind of how you'll know they're done and they're ready to be served. So we added in our heavy whipping cream. I added a lot, but you can add in about 2 cups of heavy whipping cream. I was making a lot tonight because it was for my family and also some guests that were coming over. And not to mention, my husband just absolutely loves when I make the Tuscany sauce. It's really like one of his favorite things that I make. So you add in your cheese and you give it a good mix. And you put your Tuscany sauce on low. Do not cook it on medium. Do not cook it on high. It's like a low medium. You don't want it to burn because that stuff can burn quickly if you have it too high on a heat. So make sure it's like a low medium. Give it a good stir. You want your sauce to go from like a milky sauce to a almost thick type of cheese sauce, because that's really all Tuscany sauce is. It's like a cheese sauce. So we're mixing that up. Give it a good mix. Stir it every once in a while. Make sure your cheese is melted, and then wait till it gets to like a good little thick consistency. Look at all that. And I do season my Tuscany sauce. I season it with black pepper, salt, and just a little bit of garlic powder if you want more of like a garlicky taste. So I used instant potatoes. I did not show you my potato recipe because I did not have time and I did not feel like making regular mashed potatoes. So I used instant potatoes. Tastes just the same to me, whatever. So plate your dish and you pour your Tuscany sauce all over your potatoes. I promise you it's like the best gravy for your potatoes other than like regular gravy. And you put your Tuscany sauce on your chicken as well too. Oh my God. Yeah, I promise you, like when people try this, they'll be like, you are like the best chef I've ever had. Like, this is the best meal I've ever had. But that's how you make a good chicken Tuscany dish. Yeah, please like and subscribe for more, and thank you guys for watching.